Very unsatisfied, as do many Americans. I believe one of two things. Either there's accountability, or they should have dismissed the case as the motion requested, put forth by Todd Blanche earlier. I believe that if there's no accountability, there's no deterrence. And if there's no deterrence, no accountability, what's the point to have the case anyway, so that we could all just turn around and refer to him now as the felon president? I mean, nobody in this country, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, should be turning around and taking solace in the fact that our incoming president, the leader of the free world, is a convicted felon. Nobody should enjoy that moniker for him, least of all him. Nobody should. And again, if there's no account, all I would have liked to have seen from Judge Merchan, one simple thing, turn around and say, not this unconditional discharge, something I've never heard of in my entire life. In fact, not only have I never heard of it, I went on to ChatGPT, despite the fact Judge Furman, vehemently believes I should never use ChatGPT and held it against me. Here's another guy I don't particularly care for. But I went on, I couldn't find a single case. I could not find a single case that had an unconditional discharge. How about make it a conditional discharge? And the condition would be, within the next 72 hours, you have to go work in a soup kitchen. Or come to New York, where he has that roadway on the West Side Highway, put on a red jumpsuit and pick up some garbage, just so that there's some accountability, some responsibility. I did 6 years, 3 years of incarceration and the 3 years of supervised release without a single second, not a minute, not an hour, not a day off of my sentence. And he doesn't even get a slap on the wrist. So I feel unsatisfied.
I mean, I'm sorry for this. I think my silence here, Michael Cohen, is because I'm just aghast. I'm aghast because, yet again, the justice system has failed to meet the moment. And we went through all this hoopla of the court cases and nobody is above the law and I'm going to treat you like any other defendant. Yet, regularly, you in this sense is the president-elect, he had a little press conference outside in the hallway, not even outside the courthouse, in the hallway outside of the courtroom. Okay, they had a camera and lights set up so that, he couldn't feel like he was being censored or anything like that. And he could speak to the people when he was on the campaign trail. He railed against the judge, railed against the jury throughout this entire process, railed against you, railed against all of the witnesses, and then goes to the sentencing where Judge Merchan telegraphs, don't worry, you're not going to be sentenced. And if you want to come on the video, that's fine. He shows up via video and it still rails against Merchan. As I said last hour, the man has won the prize, and he's walking out still swinging. I don't understand it. Also worth noting that the lawyers that defended him in this case are now going on to work in the Justice Department. Yeah. So talk to us about that.
Simone, you know what Donald has taught us all? That there are people that are above the law. That when you hear, we're a country of laws without justice, yeah, that's an accurate statement. And worse than that is that the law is not applied equally to all citizens. There are 3 sets of laws. There's for you and for me and for the average Joe and Jane. There's for those that are powerful, whether it's politically powerful or financially super powerful. And then, of course, there's Donald Trump. He stands unique and alone. Let's also acknowledge one thing. There is only one way, that Donald Trump could have avoided incarceration, some form of probation, some form of responsibility. And that way was he had to win the nomination and then to win the general election, despite all of everything that was thrown against him, twice impeached, 4 indictments, civil sexual assault charges, the Manhattan Attorney General, the Manhattan District Attorney case, all of this somehow managed to become inconsequential to a plurality of Americans who voted for him based upon 3 words: gasoline and groceries. That's an amazing trick.
Michael, I need not tell you, you are still on his mind. He's thinking about you. This is what
maybe he wants to call me. Maybe he wants to call me and apologize to me. What do you think? Is it possible? Donald, if you're watching, my number hasn't changed.
I think he mostly wants to talk about you on Truth Social. This is what he wrote just yesterday.
Oh, boy.
As the American people have seen, this case had no crime, no damages, no proof, no facts, no law, only a highly conflicted judge, a star witness who is a disbarred, disgraced serial perjurer and criminal election interference. Today's event was a despicable charade, and now that it is over, we will appeal this hoax, which has no merit, and restore the trust of Americans in our once great system of justice.
Yeah, I don't really know what to say other than I went to prison in part because of the campaign finance violations. I like how he throws this into my lap. It wasn't just me. Yes, the press, the media, all decreed that I was the key witness in this case. But it wasn't just my testimony that ultimately convinced the 12 independent jurors. It was also that of David Pecker. It referred back to the conversation that occurred in Trump's office, where the scheme was hatched within which to silence both Karen McDougal as well as Stormy Daniels. Now, I think a smarter move for him would have been, who cares? What's the difference? It's far from the worst thing that Donald Trump has done. Yet again, the plurality of Americans have decided that this man, who they now know so much about, is the one that they want to lead the country over the course of the next 4+ years.
You said you didn't know what to say, and I think that's in part because I failed to ask you a question. So let me ask
That's
you.
also
Let
true.
me ask you a more pointed question, which is, I was listening to you last night on with our colleague Chris Hayes, and you talked about the fact that you have applied to President Biden for a pardon. What is your argument to President Biden about why he ought to issue a preemptive pardon?
Well, there's many aspects to it, but there are 7 individuals who have, we'll call it, sponsored the pardon. 2 members of Congress, 2 historical political figures, a former ambassador. I have 2 constitutional law professors from major institutions, highly, highly respected, all saying the same thing. There's several different reasons why. One, because of this alleged enemies list, keeping me and allowing me to be in danger when all I did is respond appropriately to subpoenas. I didn't turn around, raise my hand and say, hey, call me, call me. I was subpoenaed. Going back to the very beginning, when the Senate Permanent Select Committee initially asked me, will you come in and talk to us about Russia? And I said, thank you for the invitation, but no thank you. And so then they subpoenaed me. I went and I saw the president in the Oval Office. And I said, I really don't want to do this. She said, you have to do it. This is becoming a big story, a major story. My feeling is, had I not done it, most of this wouldn't even have happened. So why is he probably angry at me? Because, well, I don't know. He probably should have known better, taken my advice and said, you know what? I'm not even allowing you to do it. Attorney-client privilege. No, he didn't want any of that. He said, you do it. This is a bad story for me. Look how many other bad stories have come out.
I want to drill down a little bit, Michael, on another aspect of this that you and I have talked about both on air, off air, and it was really kind of reflected in Prosecutor Joshua Steinglass's, he's in the Manhattan DA's office, in something that he said on Friday during sentencing. Let's take a listen to that.
The defendant has publicly threatened to retaliate against the prosecutors who have sought to hold him accountable in this and other matters. Such threats are designed to have a chilling effect, to intimidate those who have the responsibility to enforce our laws, in the hopes that they will ignore the defendant's transgressions because they fear that he is simply too powerful to be subjected to the same rule of law as the rest of us.
And that has been the end game all along, and it has been a hell of an effective end game, because from everything from the Supreme Court on down to Eileen Cannon, we have seen exactly what Mr. Steinglass has said, the fear that he is simply too powerful to be subjected to the same rule of law as the rest of us. What are your thoughts there?
Well, my thoughts are, I've been yelling this from the rooftop for now, I don't know, 5 years, 4 years. Remember, I was unconstitutionally remanded back to prison for retaliation because I refused to waive my First Amendment constitutional right by Bill Barr, the then acting Attorney General in the Trump administration. It's what the whole book Revenge is about. So those people, and I've been saying, the reason I keep talking about it is because I don't ever want to see what they did to me ever happen to any other American again. And interestingly enough, the Supreme Court denied hearing my writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court on this important constitutional issue. Can an attorney general, a weaponized attorney general, use the Department of Justice to incarcerate a political enemy, a critic, because they so choose? And they decided they didn't want to hear, but they'll listen to whatever Trump has to say. But this they ignored. And just to answer one more thing regarding the pardon, yeah, I put in the application for a presidential pardon because I believe that Joe Biden has the same responsibility to me that he had to his own son. And I would expect that the same exact pardon that he gave his son has to go to me and to anybody else that's on that enemies list, whether they want it or not. Because I assure you, solitary confinement where I did 51 days sucks.
Michael Cohen, I believe wholeheartedly that the solitary confinement was just a terrible experience for you. And I think your point about the enemies, the proverbial enemies list, right, is a good one. I wonder, have you heard anything back from the administration? It is my understanding that two things. The administration, one, is not going to give a pardon to anybody that doesn't want one. So folks who have prominently gone out and said, I do not want a pardon, the president is not going to issue a pardon to people that don't want one. But two,
they'll change their mind when they're sitting behind closed doors. That I can assure you, they're going to kick themselves in the backside for that one.
I think hindsight will always be 20/20. I guess my
Yes.
question is, have you heard from the Biden administration? And I am struck by your comparing yourself and Hunter Biden. And I wonder if, well, I'm going to just tell you, Michael Cohen, we're on national TV, we have a conversation. I don't necessarily think that's your best way to go get a pardon. I mean, Hunter Biden is the president's last surviving son. But your other point, why I do think is a strong one.
I'm somebody's son also, by the way.
Agreed. You are somebody's son. But, I mean, to be very clear, you're not the president's son. And he pardoned Hunter primarily because that is his son, I think. I did not ask the president this directly. I want to be very clear. But your point about the fact that there are many other people who are in the ire of the president-elect who could be in danger like yourself, I do think is a strong one.
And it is, and it's a reality. You know, you have to take Donald Trump for his word. When he turns on, so far, everything that he said that he intends to do, he actually intends to do. And he has been doing it one by one by one. Now, it may not all happen on day one, as he said, but ultimately he'll have 4 years plus with a whole group of individuals that are now going to be filling government positions in order to help him effectuate his goals.